Welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nick. Over on that side is, of course, Justin, providing gameplay and side commentary where he chooses to, I suppose.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking about actually several things. Most of it is basically D2 stuff. That's basically our topic today, D2 stuff. But there's a lot of facets about D2 we could talk about today. Specifically, there's a big thing that's been going on in the community lately. Bungie recently had a massive roundtable discussion with several games media outlets about the current state of Destiny 2, mostly to do with the narrative and critiques about the narrative. And there's a lot I could go into. There's several different aspects of the narrative they talked about. I could spend several hours talking about them. Like on the topic of retcons, though, I believe Mylan Games did a much better video talking about retcons than I did, especially considering his previous experience with the Bungie as a company and as one of the big writers or lore people in the community. So when it comes to retcons, that would be much more his field. So not going to talk too much about retcons. Not many people talking about the stuff revolving around Savathun, so maybe we'll go into that. But
Yeah.
today we'll be mostly focusing on one aspect entirely, and that is kind of Bungie's kind of
Writing
overall,
capabilities at the moment.
I wouldn't say writing capabilities, I would say just their kind of attitude towards Lightfall and how it panned out. Say what you will about Bungie's writing team, but I don't think that what we're being told at this roundtable is entirely truthful. In fact, funny enough, if you go back to our previous video about our critique of Lightfall and why we think Lightfall panned out the way we did, actually, we'll probably link that in the description as well, among all the articles that we're talking about and not talking about today that have to do with the roundtable. We'll put that on the top of the descriptions for videos. Just check that out. I think honestly, what we said there, I honestly believe it now even more after hearing what they said about the roundtable, because after hearing their explanation for why they did what they did, I can't help but sit there and just say, but why? Like, it makes no sense.
Why did you
To be
do it
more
this way?
to be more specific, in one of the articles, which I believe was the one they had with this is live, ladies and gentlemen, so you'll get those kinds of moments. Oh yeah, I believe that was the one they had with Games Radar. They basically said, you know, why they did what they did when it comes to the whole question thing. And throughout the article, basically one of them said that it was a narrative experiment. Let me just find the exact points here. It's a very long article, so forgive me if I take a second.
Or
I usually have these things highlighted in advance, but sometimes I work on my phone, so I don't have the ability to. It starts out with here, with one of the writers saying, usually our expansions are kind of the capstone of the year of seasons. So basically what they're saying is that everything within a season kind of leads into a big expansion. You get questions in the seasons, and then they get answered in the expansions. But this was like
a
this was
lot
the
more
middle.
questions that were actually made during the expansion than anything actually answered.
They said this was the middle piece instead. It was the capstone of what we led up to in Season of the Seraph, and then also starting something different that tapered off into the next year. Which is basically just fancy writer jargon by saying they didn't really answer anything, they didn't really end anything. They just kind of kept going with the questions.
They didn't actually have anything set up for it.
Now they said they aren't done giving reveal their content leading into the final shape, which is their next big expansion, but that'll be drip fed to us over the year, and the whole drip fed content is you either like it or you don't. I've heard some people say they don't mind it. I've heard some people say they like it. I've heard some people say they hate it.
It's okay when it works properly. When it doesn't work properly, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't go right. It feels either rushed or delayed. Like things can feel really off. It's not done nicely in a way where it seems coherent.
Me, I personally don't mind the whole shtick. But yeah, they basically said that the whole thing was, done intentionally.
Yeah.
They say that, there's a lot of narrative threads that were left very intentionally unresolved to dig into and expand upon toward, season 22 and 3, which is the one I think we're in now and next season.
Damn. Looks like the cranes blew their fuses. Gonna need you to roll up your
And that
sleeves
some of the
and
narrative
get in
arcs might be
there.
done in a different way, and that's very intentional. Again, I reiterate, just why?
Yes.
And again, I'll get into why I think that's a bad idea in a minute, but just going over again what they said. And again, I believe this was all said by one of their senior narrative leads, Nico Stevens, I believe pronounced the name right. My mistake, they didn't say it was a narrative experience on that one. I have 4 articles to sift through, so I don't remember where exactly everyone said that.
Pardon moi, as I figured this out.
Well, now you're just making me sound incompetent. But anyways, while I'm sifting through these articles, looking for the exact quotations, because like I said, it is very hard to find exact quotations in 4 different massive articles that I did not quote in the beginning. The last one. Was it on the last one? It shouldn't have been.
Got some doing what needs getting done out here, friends. Need you to lend a hand.
Reading. This is awkward because just moments of silence while I'm sifting through massive articles.
Yeah.
But again, this is live. That's kind of what happens.
This is unedited until it's edited.
Well, regardless, they did mention that, again, this was essentially a experiment. Why they would narratively experiment with the narrative now is beyond me. They basically say they're doing it to see if they can, if memory serves, deliver content in a different way compared to what they had done before. And it just doesn't make any sense, I say that because when you look at it from a business perspective, like, again, they basically admit that they purposely left a lot of stuff empty in Lightfall. So they could just, continue doing it in the seasons going on. So my question is, why? Like, that's the big question here. Why are they doing this?
Why was it done this way?
Yeah, basically. I mean, because let's look about this from different angles, right? Everything is done for a reason, I'd like to think. From a narrative perspective, this makes no sense because you're basically restarting the story. And from business perspective, it makes no sense because, I mean, yes, in the short term, you're getting more profit in the seasons because you're drip feeding content over the seasons, which you remember we all have to pay for. However, and again, however, seasonal content still gets sunset. While they're not sunsetting expansions anymore, they do still sunset seasonal content.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you really have to look at the game based off its expansions, not its seasonal content. These are individual products. And so, again, Mylan even says this in the video, when those seasonal contents get sunset, when you look at like Lightfall by itself as a product, what is it going to look like now without all that extra filler content from the seasons? It's going to look like a mess. So who would want to buy that? So you're intentionally shooting yourself in the foot by quote unquote doing this narrative experiment.
Gotta get wet to take care of it. Don't
So what do I think kind of happened here? And again, this is just me spitballing. And I gotta go into more details as to why I believe this in our previous video, Lightfall. Again, link in the comments, or maybe we'll pin that in the corner right now if we can get that to work. No.
What, you want me to pin another video?
Well, you know they can pin videos in a video, right?
Um,
With the eye.
sure. Yeah.
That's not very convincing.
I can set it in the description.
That's a no. He has no idea. Okay.
I don't know
Whatever.
that one.
Yeah, we'll figure that out one day. Anyways, but the point is, we'll pin that description below because apparently Justin does not know how to do it. You're a bad editor.
What do you mean bad
You're
editor? I'm the one who does everything.
Hey, yeah, exactly. You're the editor. You're a bad editor.
Damn, I just witnessed someone launch themselves.
Well, launched. Never
You,
mind.
you know,
Anyways,
you know the shatter skate?
yeah,
Yeah, you can well skate, and someone just did that, and they
I've heard about
threw
that. I don't know
themselves
how
into
that
a
would work
wall and
practically.
instantly die. It's basically the mechanic of throwing yourself down and then throwing yourself forward with the Eager's Edge.
Yeah.
You're basically using both momentum forces back to back and then launching yourself forward with the second one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the things you can do by breaking the physics engine. But anyways, back to the video at hand. Again, I double down on what I say in my previous videos to why I think they did what they did in Lightfall. Specifically, what I said there, to basically make a long story short, is that they really had no idea what they were going to do come Lightfall. And again, I go into the details in that video. I will spare you the details because it'll be a very long discussion if I have to rehash all of that. But again, for the sake of discussion, I'll just say that they did not know what they were going to do narratively come Lightfall because of either story reasons or maybe the narrative team just ran out of time. And so they had a general maybe idea of where they were going to go, but they had no real idea how they were going to get there. So they created basically one gigantic filler. And again, Mylan even says himself, or actually not Mylan. I was actually reading a comment in one of the videos, one of the comments in his video about Lightfall and this roundtable discussion. And I even heard someone say that, what will this look like 5 years later? Because, he posed the question, I believe, what will Lightfall look like 3 years down the line with all these seasons are finally removed and we're moved on? It's kind of like the retrospective how we look at Shadowkeep now. Shadowkeep was filler content, and I think that person in the comment section, forgive me, I do not remember your username, basically said that, yeah, this will probably look like filler content as well. And at the end of the day, that's not even wrong, because I believe that's exactly what it is. It was designed to be filler content. Yeah, they can claim it was a narrative experiment, but again, does making experiments with the narrative so close to the conclusion of the story make any sense to you? And even from a business perspective, it makes no sense because it really doesn't incentivize anyone to buy the expansions after all the seasons. Like, yeah, again, this makes short-term business sense because remember, we have to pay for the seasons, which is where all the strip-fed content will come from. But after those seasons are removed, what's the incentive? I mean, yeah, Neomuna's cool. It's got some really good music for a location. But when it comes to story, it's just a big question mark. Like, the only redeeming quality I can see is that they put Veil Containment, which is the mission we got, or weekly missions we're getting from learning about the Veil, inside the actual node itself as a mission within the nodes directly linked to the expansion, not as an actual like piece of season content. Yeah, it was added with the second season, I believe, this season, but it's not actually part of the season. It's technically still part of the expansion. So my
It is
guess
its
is
own
when the
separate
seasons
thing, so.
yeah, my guess is when the seasons get sunset, that will stay at least. So at least we'll have that to explain to people who played the expansion in the retrospective what the heck the Veil is, because no one bloody knows what the Veil is. And there's some pretty good revelations that come out of that mission. So again, I really don't think they did. I think when they say that this is a narrative experiment, they're basically lying. They're lying to save face, because again, the other option would be admit that they didn't know what they were doing, and that Lightfall is indeed filler content. And again, I go into the reasons why they shouldn't have done that back in the video, so I won't bother reiterating most of those, but suffice to say that because of the financial position they're in, and with everything being the way it is, they can't really afford to look stupid. And after the mess that was Lightfall, which again I think they expected, now more than ever, they cannot afford to look stupid. So they can just pass it off as a narrative experiment that they're running with the game and delivering content a different way. And they could always just turn around and say, oh, well, the experiment didn't work out, so we're going back to the original formula of delivering content, blah, 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 blah. Basically, it's just one grand PR stunt to avoid admitting that they really screwed up.
One stunt after another.
And, you know, who knows? Maybe there's not entirely a lie there. Maybe they know they couldn't have finished all the story in Lightfall, so they intentionally made it this way to see if they could do it another way. So, I'm not saying they're completely lying. I'm just saying that the reason of it being a narrative experiment may not entirely be true. How much of it is true, I don't know. Personal opinion, maybe not a lot of it, but who knows? And again, at the end of the day, this is all just theory and conjecture. I have no definitive proof one way or the other that they are lying about this. This could very well be just a very bad decision from the narrative team to experiment with the narrative. But as previously mentioned, considering where we are in the story of Light and Dark and the whole Destiny 2 in general, does it really make sense to them to suddenly go, let's start experimenting with the narrative, especially after all the like weird out of bit pieces we've out of place bits we've seen?
Like out of position, out of weird stuff. Like all of a sudden we're doing this type stuff.
In a way. But it just seems too much like a perfect failure for them to have not planned this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, here's the thing.
Or they're just terribly incompetent.
But no, like, here's the thing. In one scenario, it would make sense that maybe they wanted this expansion to be very mysterious-like. Like, they wanted things to be a lot of questions all of a sudden, and then we slowly reveal these questions, and then we figure it out, and then we're like, all right, well, what's this final thing for? What are we doing here? And then, boom, we figure it out. But even then, it's one of those things where you have to do it in just such a way that makes it still seem like, yes, things are still being answered. Yes, we're still making progress. In the case of Lightfall, it really didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like we made any progress. We got like a whole bunch of questions that we need to figure out answers to, but we had no real path. We had nothing to go off of, nothing to build off of, no real accomplishment, and because of that, it felt like nothing was even done out of that expansion.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why people go with the argument of you could just take the beginning cutscene and the end cutscene and call it a day.
That's the thing. That's again one of the big points we raise in our discussion as to why we feel like Lightfall was just created to save for time. because of the fact that those two cutscenes just feel too perfectly in line with each other. That almost feels like that might have been what was originally intended to begin Final Shape. But they didn't really have anything more to go off of at that point, so they just insert Lightfall between those 2 points. One of the things that they also, that their narrative teams also spoke of is that these are going to be a lot more narratively, is that these are going to be the most serialized seasons, most serialized interconnected seasons they've ever done. Basically, what they're saying is that unlike previous seasons, which actually, funny enough, previous seasons got some flack for not being all that connected, they're saying these seasons will be the most connected they've ever done. Which, you know, is good, but again, I cannot help but wonder, why are you doing it this way? Like, don't get me wrong, it's good that we're getting interconnected seasons. But the seasons, at the end of the day, don't stay forever. Those get sunset.
Yeah.
The content with them gets sunset, for the most part, outside of, you know, the weapons and stuff like that.
And one of the bigger problems with the content, the seasons being sunset, is if you have like really important information within the season only, right off the bat, boom, there's your problem. Like, important information that is relevant to the plot, relevant to the story, isn't being told in the main story, but side content that's removed.
I'm not going to argue for them to, not remove seasons, sunset them,
No,
because again,
but
facial-wise,
my
it has to be done,
recommendation
but-
at the very least is be careful with what you make of a season, what
Yeah.
kind of story you put in a season.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's the thing,
if you
right?
put major plot points within the season, like things that are going to help reveal what's going on, where are we, why are we here, type stuff, then boom, right off the bat, you've got a big problem.
Well, don't get me wrong. It's not always a problem depending on how you do it, right? Like, again, let's go with Season of the Lost. Season of the Lost had us, interacting with Savathun and, the kind of big reveal that, yes, she was impersonating Osiris and the big battle with Zeebo Wrath for the first time and yada yada yada. That's all well and good. And we don't have to see that again because at the end of the day, Witch Queen is, her and the Lucent Hive and all that stuff and the fallout of that.
That's revealed there.
But, it's all building up to the big reveal in Witch Queen. And that's why I think that the old seasonal model probably works a lot better than the one they're doing now with the quote-unquote experimentation, where I think even Mylan said himself, where it feels like they're, or maybe it was one of his comment section, I can't remember, but it basically said that, one of them said that basically it felt like they were restarting the season, or they were restarting the Light and Dark season, or saga, like near the end.
Yeah.
It felt like I think I think he specifically said this, where it was like, it feels like they created Lightfall so anyone could play it, regardless of how much lore you previously read or not. Like, even new players could, and you could all understand the same amount. Or as he liked to say it, you could all play Lightfall, and we'd all be equally confused, regardless of how much lore you read, because it makes no epic sense.
Yeah.
I like maybe that was their intention, and again, they're kind of soft rebooting the lore, which is kind of what Mylan himself also says. But again, I'll leave the whole discussion of retcons to him and his video. We'll link that in the description as well, because he has a lot more ground to stand on when it comes to discussing retcons than I do. At least I would think so. And I don't know if Justin will agree with me, but I think he does as well.
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
As one of the oldest lore veterans in the community outside of Bife.
We'll need to open up the campus again.
So I'll leave that discussion for him. This is just a discussion of their overall response to the Lightfall criticism. At the end of the day, one thing is certain. They've clearly heard what the community is saying, but instead of apologizing or backpedaling or something,
Just
which
saying,
you come to
hey,
expect
this
from a
wasn't
company.
wasn't the best of ideas. Maybe this didn't.
Yeah,
work.
not even apologizing, but just being like, yeah, this wasn't our best product or anything. They basically doubled down and said, yep, this was all intentional, which
Not really.
Call me
what
crazy,
they
but
do.
almost makes him look even more stupid. Like, maybe not, no, not stupid. That's not the right word. Tone deaf. That's the right word. Because it's call me crazy, but when your community criticizes your storytelling, your first response should not be to be like, "Yep," and it was all intentional. You know,
This was
that shouldn't be the first
all
thing you want to admit.
foreseen.
Like, again, in the video, in the articles, they mentioned that this was all done again because of a narrative experiment to see if they can retell the narrative and deliver it in a different way, with the seasons kind of being the middle point and the expansions kind of being the beginning of the questions. Which again, I don't think is a good idea because when the seasons get sunset, all that kind of buildup is gone. So you have to really look at the expansions as the core pillars of the Destiny experience. And again, to quote from Mylan, when you look at Lightfall after all the seasons are going to get sunset, what Lightfall going to look like by itself? Probably going to look like a ruddy mess.
Yep.
So who's going to want to buy
Like,
that?
well, yeah, and then that goes back to our review of Lightfall. On its own,
Again,
it's
yeah.
all right, but you're gonna need the seasons, and the seasons are gonna be removed. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's like gameplay wise, don't get me wrong. Gameplay wise, Lightfall is great. You know, it adds a new subclass. It's a fun subclass. Could have been done better, but whatever. But when you look at it from a narrative perspective, it's a complete mess. You know, it's a complete,
Open sesame.
Hodgepodge of random stuff going on.
yeah, like the Rocky training montage. Like, we could have had the whole Veil containment section as a mission instead of the whole training montage. That would have probably made a lot more sense and explained the Veil more, and people wouldn't have been at the end going, "The F is the Veil."
Perimeter towers
Pretty
in
much.
range.
You
Stay
know.
open, Guardian.
But instead, nope, it's mostly Strand stuff. And again, we go into why they do the Strand stuff in our video of why Lightfall is the way it is. Again, like in the description. Basically, we
I don't
said
think
that
we're
it was there
linking.
to fill time.
I don't think at this rate we're linking every single video on Earth.
Well, no, we're only linking this, Mylan's, and ours. That's it. Or the articles,
You're asking me to link
Mylan's, and ours.
2 of our videos and Marlon's video as well as.
What
our
do you mean 2 of
sources.
ours? I'm just saying link the Lightfall video. What do you mean 2 of ours? What are you getting the second?
We've talked about Destiny in other videos.
Well, don't have to link those. I'm just saying link the Lightfall critique because I'm referencing it a lot.
All right.
Yeesh.
You're making it seem like we need a lot more.
No. I'm just referencing our old video a lot here because, basically, again, to our audience as well, everything I'm saying, my theories as to why they're lying and stuff like that, I basically, if you're wondering why am I not giving too many details, it's all in that video. The only reason I'm not giving too many details as to why I think that in this video is because I'd be making you sit here for another hour and a half while I rehash everything, and I don't think that would be a good use of your time or mine, so... If you want to look at my our full experience of Lightfall, why I personally think, and I think he as well think that, it's basically filler content and that they're basically lying when they say that it's a narrative experiment in light of recent events, go look at that video. I provide all the evidence and our opinions and everything there.
Yeah.
It's quite a long video, so again, that's why I'm not rehashing everything. It takes a bit of explaining. Ugh. But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of where we stand in the narrative right now.
Yep.
Bungie has made their roundtable discussions. They've answered several things, not just again about retcons or their opinion of Lightfall and the seasons, but they also talked about Savathun coming back next season. They actually talked about Savathun being an ally, or potentially the idea that Savathun and her
One of the
Lucenhive will be an ally.
keys that we need in order to get through the portal.
Yeah. One of the games articles asked, what about a Lucenhive alliance? One of the narrative directors don't expect that anytime soon. Chiefly because they're the Hive and they've done a lot of genocide. So, having people put aside that is going to be difficult. I think the genocide route might not be the best thing to be like, hey, they committed genocide, because my response in a tower discussion about that would have been like, yeah, but don't we? Like, we've
Yeah.
driven at least 2 species to extinction in the solar system already. We've
Yeah, but
nearly wiped out the
keep in mind that they are invaders to our solar system, so
That's basically the stand your ground law. I can legally murder you if you come into my house.
well, I can legally murder
Uh,
you when you're somehow legally murdering us.
yeah.
It only seems
Uh,
fair until it's not.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I get the story perspective. Like, oh, they've done a lot of genociding, but it's like, I think from a Guardian, that'd be kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. Because, remind me, how many things have we killed?
Yes.
But I get it. Savathun possessed Osiris, and Saint himself probably has quite the axe to grind for just that alone. So, I get it. But we'll see. We'll see what becomes of that. They also said don't expect Savathun to play as big of a role in the story going forward. Astrocross kind of mentioned something on his video about like why. We won't link that in the description, but go look at his if you're interested. And basically says, why don't you make a character as big an impact when they're alive, when they come back to life as when they died,
Yeah.
Basically, why are characters always suddenly now becoming doormats after they come back to life?
Yeah. And it's not wrong in that because technically, in a way, Shalone was meant to be dead. Like everyone from the planets originally was, in a way, kind of presumed dead. Like there was presumed
Presumed dead.
gone, and then all of a sudden they're slowly coming back and being relevant in the story and all that again. And then same thing, Savathun dies, comes back, and oh hey look, they came back again and now they're relevant. And then we've got Final Shape where all of a sudden Cade's coming back and he's going to be relevant again. So in more ways than one, that argument isn't really wrong.
Yeah, it's like I don't like. I agree with him when he says I don't have a problem with them killing off characters, even if some of their deaths are anticlimactic. Amanda Holiday, but at least make them as big an impact in the story when they come back to life as before they died. So they're very again, Witch Queen's a perfect example. Here's a character who had a massive impact on the story. Now she's just going to be like a side character every now and then. Come on, this is the freaking. I love voice that. Come on, but this is the freaking Witch Queen.
With him.
This feels like a character who would be anything but a side character.
Decide to walk through those doors every day.
I know this feels hollow after the fact.
Like, there's a ton of interesting story you could do between her and Zevo Wrath. So maybe we'll get that someday. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that'll come next season. I don't know.
I mean, we've got some Zivu Wrath stuff during the dungeon, so there's that.
Yeah, and funny enough, again, I'm surprised we actually even heard Zevo Wrath's voice officially in this season, like just in a season. You'd think they'd save that for like an expansion or the big end cutscene of some of the last season or something. Nope, she just kind of just randomly appears this season.
It can be tough to know
Yeah.
someone is worth the effort.
She angry too, so
Very angry.
But then again, she's a god of war, so I imagine not being angry is, being angry is kind of in the job description.
That, and to be fair, both her sister and brother are gone now, so...
Gone, yeah. One is straight up dead, and the other has betrayed, died, and maybe will come back to life.
betrayed, died, memory wiped, and doesn't even really know much about you anymore except for vague memories. So
That'll be interesting. Like, wouldn't it be funny if we just bring back Sabbath next season, and we're just like, by the way, Zero's hunting you, and her first response is, "Who?" First response. It's like, oh,
someone
okay.
important. Don't worry about it.
Someone important who you may very well be who you are related to. Don't worry about it. They may be trying to kill you, but that's a small detail.
Small details.
Details. Again, Bife does interesting videos where it's like the Lucid Hive are in a state of pandemonium right now, looking for new leaders. So it makes me wonder, because obviously Imaru is going to come back next season, because we're going to strike a deal with him somehow to bring back Savathun. So it'll make me wonder,
And,
like,
yeah,
what exactly state
dialogue-wise,
Imaru's in.
they're not wrong when Zavala said, like, Savathun is against the witness, so if Amaro wants Savathun back, he's gonna have to bargain with us in some way.
Yeah. Might as well bargain with him instead of, like, try to deceive him, because I doubt that'll work, considering who his partner is. But
We'll see where it
It'll
goes.
be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Anyways, but yeah, that's the video.
Yeah, like there's not much. There's just like they're starting to properly make a build up towards towards final shape now. That's starting to be properly built up now, but it doesn't feel like it was a good idea to go and ignore a lot of main things that should have been addressed during Lightfall.
Yeah, again, it's interesting that of all their responses to the Lightfall critique, their first response is to double down and be like, "Yep, this was totally intentional."
This is what we wanted to do. It's like,
Is it? Like, is this a good idea? I don't know.
yeah.
Anyways, we'll leave you there then, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good week. See you next week. Hopefully, we'll get more enlightening stuff next week, or not enlightening, more, maybe happy stuff next week instead of the question of does Destiny know what the hell they're doing? I don't know.
Yep. And then we'll go from
And
there.
yeah. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Have
a good night.
good one.